2021. Mike Arareng reports from Uganda.
It is true, the leadership of the National Unity Party has confirmed it is chaotic as I speak to you right now. And as I speak to you right now, the leader of the opposition, Robert Kyagulanyi, is currently on his way to Buikwe, where he's going to address huge gatherings. Thousands and thousands of police have been deployed. These supporters who have been arrested, so far they have not been charged, but they have been detained in various police stations, and it appears they'll be released maybe after the general election that will be on 15th of January 2026.
There's confusion now over the number of students abducted from a Catholic school in Nigeria's Niger state last week. The state governor says that only 14 parents have so far reported their children missing, though that number could rise as some families live far from the school. The governor, Umar Bago, disputed the kidnapping number given by the school, saying it had no proper records.
The school said to me in writing, missing, not abducted, number of missing students. So they are not certain whether these entire students are with the bandits, nor or are they in the bush, or because of the scare, some of them have gone back to their homes.
The attempted murderer accused an alleged criminal cartel kingpin Vusumuzi Ket Matlala in South Africa has not submitted a signed written statement to Parliament's ad hoc committee. Matlala, who is testifying from the Kotsi Mampuru Correctional Facility in Pretoria, instead has an electronic draft version. The committee is investigating allegations of criminal infiltration, corruption and political interference in the criminal justice system of the country. Evidence leader Advocate Arendse says having a signed statement before appearing before the committee is not a precondition.
Unlike what has become customary, and which has been required by this honourable committee, we do not have a finalised, signed, written statement before you. What has been posted in the past short while is an electronic version of a draft statement, which we are hopeful will be signed sometime today, tomorrow, which can go on record before the committee.
Lastly, the number of people killed by floods in southern Thailand has now risen to 33. The worst hit area was around Hai Nhai, which saw its heaviest rainfall in 300 years. Most of the city has been submerged, with a viral social media clip showing children walking along power lines to avoid the rising water below. The BBC's Jonathan Head reports.
Volunteers are travelling from all over Thailand to bring flat-bottomed boats to help with the rescue effort. Army and police helicopters have been flying in medical supplies like oxygen to hospitals and flying out patients who need urgent treatment elsewhere. The unprecedented volume of water dropped by tropical storms this year has overwhelmed lakes and drainage canals. Officials expect the flooding, which has affected nearly 3 million people, to last several more days.
Recapping on your top stories, gunfires broken out near the headquarters of the National Election Commission in Guinea-Bissau's capital. The coup-prone West African country held a presidential election on Sunday, and provisional results are expected to be announced tomorrow. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News, the African perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Arsenal opts against renewal with a visit Rwanda, while Kaizer Chiefs marketing director breaks down the club's image rights approach. Details coming up at 4:30.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Tami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is exactly 6 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. A very good afternoon to you, Africa. Here's what we've got in store for you today on Africa in Business. We're going to be focusing on the South African Revenue Services. They've launched a large business forum, in effect bringing into one place, one gathering, the largest contributors to the country's taxes. We'll find out why in just a moment. And also AGOA, once again, making its its way back into the spotlight. A bill has been passed at the U.S. Senate in the United States proposing to extend AGOA for a further 2 years, but not all the currently eligible countries are included in that bill. We'll find out what those exclusions are a little bit later on this afternoon. It's gone 7 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Continue to engage with us on the various social media platforms. On X, Instagram and YouTube, you'll find us at Channel Africa 1, and on Facebook we are at Channel Africa.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Tamengubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends. Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows. Catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Tamengubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
South Africa is weighing a 20% tax on online gambling as it tries to rein in the sector's rapid growth and mounting social harms. The country's national treasury said while the proposed tax could generate around $580 million in additional revenue, its main purpose is to discourage problem and pathological gambling and their ill effects. Innocent Simosa has more on this story.
Citing the rapid rise on online gambling and its social impact, the National Treasury has proposed a 20% tax on gross gambling revenue from online and interactive betting. I spoke with economist Kevin Totani and began by asking whether, given South Africa's economic pressures and high unemployment, a 20% tax on online gambling would genuinely curb addictive behavior or simply drive gamblers towards unregulated platforms.
The implementation of a 20% tax on online gambling is most likely going to decrease the level of gambling by some margin. We don't know exactly by what margin because we're not certain what level the gambling problem or phenomenon has reached in South Africa. We're not sure of that as yet. But obviously, according to the laws of demand and supply, we're going to see a reduction in gambling, because the higher the price, the lower the demand. That's what we know. That's the basic dynamics of economics, right? But of course, we have to understand that this tax as well is probably going to create problems with the rising up of unregulated platforms which aren't registered onshore within South Africa and offshore outside of the country. That as well might be a situation as well. And the problem with unregulated players in the gambling market is that the government won't be able to get revenue out of them.
Tutani says restricting or banning gambling advertisements could form part of the solution.
The government could actually ban marketing and PR by all gambling companies within South Africa. The government could prohibit them from marketing any form of marketing to the public. We're talking here of advertisements, getting space on billboards. We're talking here of sponsoring sports teams and all of that. If the government bans this, what we're most likely going to see is that the practice is going to be unattractive, and this is going to limit the number of people that participate within the gambling market.
From an economic standpoint, how can government balance revenue generation with real social protection, especially when 42% of South Africans gamble monthly? Bonke Dumisa is an independent economic analyst.
If ever you cannot allow people who gamble to claim back their cost of doing business, many people will be surprised by what I'm saying, then you cannot rush to say when people have made some winnings then online or even with physical betting, then they must pay more taxes on that one. SARS is making taxes everywhere. And what you don't do is you don't go out of your way to kill the the goose that lays the golden eggs.
As government weighs its next steps, economists say any tax measures must be paired with broader safeguards to meaningfully tackle South Africa's growing gambling crisis. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Sимons in Johannesburg.
It is exactly 12 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we turn our focus once again to AGOA. It has been reported that a bill aiming to extend the African Growth and Opportunity Act for 2 years has been tabled in the U.S. Senate. However, this new bill proposes removing South Africa from the trade program. The bill reportedly calls for AGOA to benefit African countries that support U.S. interests, rather than those aligned with China or Russia. For more on this, we joined on the line by trade analyst Viwe Njongwana. A very good afternoon to you, Viwe. So once again here we see AGOA making its way back into the headlines. But what would be the immediate economic impact on South Africa if it was indeed to be excluded from AGOA? Welcome.
Welcome. Well, thank you very much, Tammy. I think the immediate impact is that it would inflate the cost of trading with the U.S., in particular South Africa exports to U.S., and perhaps it would even diminish the business case of certain South African businesses. But the other aspect of it is that there are also American businesses that are dependent on relatively inexpensive South African goods and commodities. So they would also be impacted negatively from such a scenario.
I mean, certainly the export sectors would be very hard hit by this. So could this bill signal perhaps a shift in how the United States views its strategic relationship with South Africa? Because you'll remember in the rhetoric leading up to this point, the strategic placement of South Africa in relation to the United States remained one of the key focuses of why AGOA would perhaps continue for South Africa.
Yes, I think, Tammy, the nexus between politics and economics is really being exemplified here, where we cannot divorce the two. They are inextricably linked. And I think from a South African perspective, we ought to have planned for this moment as well, also with some of the decisions that we've made politically and even economically in relation to other countries that the U.S. may feel threatened by. So you plan for these scenarios, and I'd be quite surprised if South Africa hadn't planned for this inevitability. Remember, it's been a long time coming as well. It's not something that started recently. Even during the tenure of President Biden, there has been these threats. So I think we've had more than enough time to prepare for what is transpiring.
The current G20 spat between South Africa and the United States, how much of an impact do you see that making on this current move?
Look, there are systems at play, but there are also personalities at play. And I think what we need to ask ourselves is, beyond the presidency of Donald Trump, will this be the status quo between South Africa and the U.S.? I would like to think not, but President Trump has got an element of being unpredictable, and I think we need to accept that that's the politics that he has brought forward, not only in relation to South Africa, but other countries as well. And we need to find ways to stabilize around his temperament The one other thing that I must mention, though, we have seen in recent time, Tammy, President Trump even backtracking on some of his decisions because they are not only consequential to one party, but some of them are even consequential to his own constituency, which are the American citizens. So I don't think that we must view this in a very, we don't need to view this as though it cannot be reversed, because we have been seeing certain reverses and backtracking in relation to Brazil and other countries in relation to China. And it may be the case with South Africa as well, when the consequences really start playing themselves out, not only for South Africa, but also for the U.S.
We have seen a number of delegations who were going to the White House in the wake of the tariffs that were meted out. There was also the issue of the genocide or the ethnic cleansing that was alleged to have been taking place in South Africa, that saw delegates going to the United States to sit down with Donald Trump. In this instance, and in the wake of this new bill, what diplomatic or trade responses are available to Pretoria to challenge or to soften this proposal?
Well, I think inevitably we are going to have to diversify our trade with other countries. But one thing that I must mention that, what we saw last week taking place in relation to the G20, where there were countries, even European countries and countries that are considered to be a part of the West, actually standing in solidarity with South Africa. So South Africa needs to build a community, an economic community on good faith, because this narrative that there's a genocide in South Africa is not true at all. And it's quite sad that there is a president that is insisting that it is true. So I think we've got enough support globally as a nation, in particular in relation to the accusations that have been leveled against us that there is a genocide. It's just not true. But also, Tammy, there is a coalition of the wounded that can easily develop against Donald Trump, because we are not exclusively in this alone. There are European countries, there are countries that were traditionally American allies that he has been heavy-handed towards them as well. And I think we need to exploit that from an economic and trade perspective to diversify our domestic economy.
Is this likely, Viwe, to impact or at least prevent U.S. companies from investing in South Africa and viewing South Africa as an investment destination if AGOA is indeed going to be retracted and removed from the country?
Well, Walmart has just entered the South African market, and here's the thing. We tend to aggregate countries and personify them around the person of the president, but there are a lot of other transactions that are taking place outside of his control. So I think it will be quite interesting to see how that plays itself out. At face value, it may seem quite consequential, but if investors see South Africa as a lucrative market, then they may still enter. There are many investors around the world that have an interest in South Africa. Maybe they have not entered yet, but I think South Africa is still considered a lucrative investment destination, including for American investors. A more interesting question, Tammy, that one we should ask ourselves is, beyond this issue of AGOA, are we moving towards full-blown sanctions? because that's a different ball game altogether. And we should ask ourselves if we were to get to that point, and perhaps even prepare for that point, because to some extent there's been an unpredictability pertaining to President Trump, and it might not be far-fetched to prepare for full-blown sanctions if removing us from AGOA doesn't have the intended political outcome that he was looking for.
And as we conclude our discussion this afternoon, Viwe, what signal does removing South Africa send to other African countries who are participating in AGOA?
Look, I think, remember, South Africa is seen as the gateway to Africa, and also with the interconnectedness of our economies, it may have one or another negative implication in relation to the other AGOA countries or other African countries that are a part of AGOA. But I think fundamentally, Tammy, is that there's enough good faith in South Africa, in as much as domestically we may feel that we are really under pressure, and things are being exposed through various parliamentary committees and commissions. But there's enough good faith in South Africa overall as a leading economy on the continent. So I don't think at a sentimental level there will be consequences, but perhaps at an economic level it may inflate. There may be knock-on effects that inflate certain costs of doing business with South Africa, because South Africa may be a conduit to America for many African countries. Yes.
All right, Viwe, thank you very much for that analysis this afternoon. Very much appreciated. I think what's quite interesting here is one of the reasons that has been put forward is South Africa's supposed, ties and relationships with the likes of China and Russia. But what's quite certain is that these relations with Russia and China are not exclusive to South Africa alone. But both these countries have been making immersive inroads into relations and trade and investment and development on the entire African continent as a whole. So I wonder where that leaves, Trump and the rest of the continent. If you could maybe just care to comment on that as we log off.
Yes, look, you're very correct. South Africa is not the only country that's in relation or relating with China and Russia. But the second thing is that South Africa is a non-aligned country, So we have to relate with as many economies as possible, especially given our challenges with our domestic economy, issues of unemployment and so on and so forth. So unless America can put forward a proposition that says, look, we can cater for the South African economy, which I doubt we can cater for it exclusively, then I don't think we can be punished for trying to spread the net out wide in relation to other countries. I think what is very important, though, as they say, the devil is in the detail. We need to find which areas are areas of concern in relation to America and see where there can be concessions. But if there can't be concessions, then we will have to make a decision. Whether is it military issues that the U.S. is concerned about? Is it social issues? Is it how we vote in the United Nations? So I think President Trump has got an obligation, if he's really operating from a place of good faith, to furnish South Africa and South African diplomats with that information so that we can make an informed decision on how to balance our relations with the U.S., Russia, and China.
Viwe Jongwana, thank you so much for your insight as trade analyst Viwe Jongwana.
Thank you, madam.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Tamengubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is 27 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Now, there's a new safety index that was released today, and it has revealed how South Africans perceive the security of ride-hailing services and what influences their decisions when booking trips on these services. The findings show that safety does remain the most decisive factor for riders, especially at night. Channel Africa's Lebohang Mabange has more on this.
New data released by mobility company Bolt in partnership with Ipsos, a global market research and consulting firm, shows that safety concerns continue to shape how South Africans use ride-hailing platforms and what gives them confidence when traveling, particularly at night or in unfamiliar areas. Bolt South Africa's senior operations manager, Simo Kalajic, says the study aims to reflect passengers' real experiences and expectations.
That's why we've partnered with Ipsos, one of the world's most respected research firms, and this to gain an independent, honest, and data-driven view of how South Africans experience ride-hailing services. This study will help us understand what gives passengers confidence, where pressure points are, and how safety perceptions shape behavior, especially at night or in unfamiliar areas. For us, today is also about listening to the voices of passengers, listening to what they expect from all of us.
Government says safety lapses in the e-hailing sector threaten economic stability and trust in the transport system. From the Gauteng Department of Economic Development, Bongani Nkosi says safety directly affects the industry's economic potential.
As the Department of Economic Development, we recognize that e-hailing has become an essential part of mobility in our province. But for this sector to fulfill its economic potential, safety must be our top priority. Every ride taken through an e-hailing platform represents a person placing their trust in the system. That trust must be protected. A safe e-hailing environment strengthens Gauteng's economy. It builds confidence, reduces conflict within the transport sector, protects jobs, encourages investments, and when safety fails, the entire value chain suffers.
Ipsos data shows that the majority of riders turn to e-hailing because they feel safer than using public transport. Ipsos associate consultant in Kenya, Stephanie Kanyiri, says safety is now a determining factor in choosing ride-hailing.
We find that safety is not just a benefit of ride-hailing, but a decisive factor shaping passengers' choices, where we had 90% actually perceiving ride-hailing to be safer. And we see that most riders report turning to apps because they feel safer than public transport, particularly in vulnerable situations, whereby we continue to ask what are some of the situations that prompted the use of ride-hailing. And we find that instances such as late-night travel after drinking or when public options feel insecure.
The study also highlights how ride-hailing is used as a safety tool, with many South Africans booking trips for others. Kanyiri says this shows the trust placed in these services.
In South Africa, 93% of ride-hailing passengers have booked a ride-hailing trip for someone else, most often to ensure that their loved ones do get home safely. Convenience, reliability, and late-night safety are the main motivations, highlighting the trust that people place in ride-hailing as a secure and dependable transport choice. And this speaks to the question whereby we asked what was the main reason that you chose to actually book a ride-hailing app for them.
The findings point to a growing reliance on ride-hailing for safety, especially during late-night travel, but also highlight the need for continued improvements to protect passengers and rebuild trust where it has been lost. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebohang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
It is exactly 4:30 p.m. Central African time. Let's head over now to the markets desk where Bontle Hedbush is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Tammy. Good afternoon. And our final look at the indicators this afternoon. $1 is trading at 17 Rand 24 cents in South Africa. In Botswana, it's trading at 13 Pula 31. Namibia, 17 Namibian dollars 24. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 22 kwacha 89. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 76 in Ethiopia, at 153 birr 82. Uganda 3,605 shilling, and in Tanzania it's at 2,465 shilling. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,453 naira this afternoon. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 47 Egyptian pound 75. Tunisia at 2 dinar 94, Algeria 129 dinar 75. In Morocco, the dollar will cost you 9 dirham 17 this afternoon. In Angola, it's trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,185 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,154 per ounce, platinum $1,574 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $62.26 a barrel this afternoon. And that's your indicators. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Bontle Hetbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And for the latest from the business of sport, here is Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Very good afternoon from the Sports Day. So Jessica Mutawung, Kaizer Chiefs Marketing Director, as well as board member, has shed light on just how image right agreements are structured at the South African Football Club. Now, the subject remains a complex one, which when the Premier Soccer League, even more so for a brand as commercially influential as Kaizer Chiefs. Mutawung says Chiefs have adopted a tailored approach that ensures the club and its players benefit fairly from the business attached to their partnership.
Look, it's a complex space, and it's one that's evolving and growing. It's one that even SARS is looking at because it's a revenue driver for brands as well as players themselves. And really what it is that we take the image of a player, which is his likeness, his nicknames, all of that, and we pay them a fee also to be able to use it as a brand and be able to derive commercial return, you know. And what that means is that obviously then the player has to be available for either appearances, activities, or we can use their photographs and all of that. And that's not just for ourselves, it's also to protect the league.
Mutawung also adds that the conversation with players is never about Chiefs getting their way in that type of deals.
Sitting down with players individually and saying, this is your profile, this is who you are, also helping them. I mean, we've had deals with players, I'll give you an example, even with Anitu, for example, who had a big image and we had built that image with Itu, and we said, okay, fine, how do we work together to make sure you generate revenue over and above what we're generating? We also generate revenue. And it's a one-on-one understanding you as a brand and also saying maybe these are the brands you should be speaking to, we should be collectively speaking to that fit your profile, you know? And that's what we're doing with our players, is profiling them and saying.
On to this now. Arsenal have announced the end of their 8-year partnership with Visit Rwanda. The club says they have mutually agreed to conclude their relationship with the Rwanda Development Board at the end of the current season. So the agreement, which saw Visit Rwanda become Arsenal's first official sleeve partner, drew criticism from areas of the club's fan base. In April of this year, a group of supporters launched a campaign against the deal and also called for it to be scrapped ahead of the current season. As part of the campaign, the group also also revealed a satirical Visit Tottenham Hotspur billboard outside of the Emirates Stadium ahead of the home game with Crystal Palace just this past weekend. In February of this year, the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo has also called, or rather had called, on Arsenal to end their sponsorship after Rwandan-backed rebels seized the city of Goma by the DRC. In February, Arsenal were also one of 3 major football clubs in Europe urged to drop that sponsorship deal with Visit Rwanda by the government of the neighbouring DRC. In a statement that was released, Arsenal's Chief Executive Officer Richard Garlick thanked the Rwanda Development Board for their partnership and also noted the achievement the club as well as the board made together. And finally, British Racing has also been spared now from a tax rise on betting on the sport, which it feared could also lead to thousands of job losses. In her budget speech, Chancellor Rachel Reeves did not increase the rate by bookmakers on the racing bets. Reports of a proposed rise had also led to British Racing holding an unprecedented one-day strike in September. But although the Treasury has not increased the 15% tax rate paid by bookmakers on racing, the gambling tax rises could also now have a knock-on effect on the sport. Remote gaming duty paid online casino betting will rise now from 21 to about 40% of April 2026. Now, general betting duty paid on the other forms of sport betting will remain at 15% in betting shops, but from from April 2027, that will rise from 15 to 25% online. The measures are expected to now generate $2.1 billion from the gambling industry by 2031, and also shares in major companies fell immediately after the announcement. That concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is 39 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we turn our focus now on the oil and gas sector in South Africa. Dr. Ross Compton, who's Senior Director of Global Policy at Energio Alliance, says South Africa's struggling economy could just get a major boost from a revitalized oil and gas sector. And this could be done by providing investor certainty. In the report, which is titled The Economic Benefits and Opportunities of Enhancing the Upstream Oil and Gas Sector in South Africa, Dr. Compton says developing the country's upstream resources, particularly in the areas of major gas finds off the Southern Cape, could be injecting billions into the GDP. They could also create thousands of jobs and strengthen the energy security. He now joins us on the line to unpack the report. Dr. Compton, welcome to Africa in Business. Good to have you with us. Let's start off perhaps with what the estimated economic contribution South Africa could realize by developing a competitive upstream oil and gas sector. Welcome.
Well, good afternoon, Tommy. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for the introduction there. It's a great overview to the report that we've published, and as you say, in order to unpack some of the opportunity there, the report highlights a number of things regarding the potential in South Africa, and from potential operations in Block 11B to 12B, just as an example, there's the potential to add the contribution of approximately 23 billion rand annually. And in terms of job creation, estimates show potential for up to around 20,000 jobs. And that would be a mixture of skilled and unskilled jobs. As you can appreciate, the supply chain for oil and gas is broad, and there is a need for some highly skilled jobs, but there's also an awful lot of support services required to support activities going on both onshore and offshore, of course. So there's a lot of potential there. And we see a lot of that happening across the border in Namibia, where they're a little bit further along, still in their very early exploration and appraisal phases, but far enough along that we're seeing some of those realizations in increases to GDP, increases to employment, and so on.
You make reference there to Namibia. When we look at the projected economic impact and economic contribution of South Africa's upstream oil and gas sector, as you've highlighted now, how do those compare with leading African producers, the likes of Nigeria, Angola, or even Mozambique?
It's probably a little early to say at the moment, but I think the potential is certainly there in a number of areas. So I've mentioned Block 11B, 12B to begin with, partly because it's sort of a bit further along in terms of the exploration that has happened there. But there's a lot of interest in the Orange Basin in particular, partly because it is that geological continuity, that shared resource, if you like, across the border with Namibia. And the work that has been undertaken in Namibia has done a lot to de-risk to a certain degree what is on the South African side. And so we can see that there's a lot of potential there, but there's a lot more work to be done before we can say with any certainty how that looks in relation to some of the others you mentioned there. But certainly a lot of potential, but a lot of work to be undertaken.
South Africa does tend to be a forerunner and front runner in many areas of development and progress. Why is it that in the area of exploration and production, as far as oil and gas investment are concerned, South Africa has lagged behind in comparison to some of the countries that you've mentioned, the Namibias, Mozambique and Ghana?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think it relates to a certain amount of uncertainty regarding the regulatory framework, and that's changing. The government is doing a lot to put in place the relevant frameworks for this, and there's some good things to report since the assent of the Upstream Petroleum Resources Development Act earlier this year. That adds a layer of certainty over what came before. Industry is now waiting for the upstream regulations that will come on the back of that legislative act. And again, that will add further certainty for industry. They're currently in draft form, so we look forward to those coming into being in the near future. But I think some of the other areas you mentioned, Namibia in particular, if I stay with that, they've provided that certainty for operators and investment certainty for people to ensure that as they propose projects, as they get authorizations for their projects, they're able to undertake those activities and move forward through the development cycle. So it's really given that investment certainty, which is encouraging of course, investment across the border or to some of those other countries that you mentioned.
You've mentioned some of the key reforms that would need to take place in order for investor confidence to enter a phase of uptick. How much of a role do incentives play, and what type of incentives do you believe are needed in order to attract that large-scale investment into upstream oil and gas exploration?
I think the key thing really is certainty, Tami, to be honest. It's the fiscal regime is comparable to others, so it's really about certainty for investment and having the surety that if you're getting an authorization for a project, that you're able to go forward, that the terms of some of those early authorization processes are unambiguous, and that timelines are being kept to, both on the regulatory side and of course in submissions from industry. So that really helps to move things forward. So it's not necessarily about incentives, it's more about creating certainty for industry to go forward. I think in many other cases the conditions are there. It's just getting that final piece of the puzzle to take things forward.
You speak about certainty, but I also hear within your answer a lack of confidence in a sense of what is said may not necessarily come to pass. Can you name perhaps scenarios that have helped to exacerbate this lack of confidence in the country?
Yeah, certainly. I think some of the lengthy appeals processes and the litigation have been a contributory factor to some of that uncertainty. And certainly they lower confidence in, as you say, being able to move forward with projects. So I think that's where some certainty around some of the ambiguities in the regulation need to be addressed. in order to lower the risk of some of those processes taking place. Of course, those are democratic processes, very much support that, but I think sometimes there is a need to identify some of the drawbacks and some of the holes in the litigation, in the regulation, that allow those to come forward all too easily. And I think that would really help address the situation.
And how far is South Africa in addressing some of these regulatory barriers?
Well, I think it remains to be seen. When we've got the regulations in place, we'll be, again, that bit more further forward. We'll have more certainty for investors to consider their next steps. And of course, to this point, the projects that have been proposed or undertaken have fallen under the older regime, under the Mineral Resources Act. So once all of those pieces are in place, the next phase of project work will come under the new regime, under the Upstream Petroleum Act. So it'll be interesting to see how things develop once that is all in place.
So wait and see approach. Dr. Ross Compton, we thank you so much for your insight and for taking us through some of what came out of that report.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's Dr. Ross Compton, he's Senior Director of Global Policy at the Energeo Alliance, on a report that was put together titled The Economic Benefits and Opportunities of Enhancing the Upstream Oil and Gas Sector in South Africa, highlighting the many opportunities that exist for investment in exploration in this sector, and how neighboring countries like Namibia, Mozambique, and even, West African countries like Ghana have benefited from this, and why South Africa is lagging behind some of the regulatory barriers that need to be adjusted. But as he sums it up at the end, as it stands, it remains a wait and see.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Tami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
In around 10 minutes' time, Vue d'Afrique will be taking over the airwaves as we hand over to our French desk. We say bonjour to you, Joël. What do you have in store for us today?
Alors sur Vue d'Afrique, on parlera de l'administration Trump qui prévoit une réévaluation des dossiers une réévaluation des dossiers de tous ceux qui ont foulé le sol des États-Unis sous l'administration Biden. Et on parlera également des 6 millions de personnes qui sont affamées au Soudan du Sud. Voilà, près de 6 millions de personnes qui souffrent d'une grave crise de la faim au Soudan du Sud. Ce sera avec notre invité d'Oxfam tout à l'heure. Et en sport avec Jolino Sungu, il s'agira du football, la crise à la Fédération guinéenne de football notamment. Merci Tami.
Merci beaucoup. That's beautiful, coming up in around 10 minutes time.
From markets to innovation, Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Come November every single year, specifically towards the end of November, the entire South African nation goes a little bit crazy because it's specials galore. It's what's called Black Friday. And according to ABSA, the final quarter of the year is a make or break period for South African retailers, with a Black Friday and festive trading shaping profitability and also influencing strategies for the year ahead. With the recent data from ABSA Merchant Spend Analytics revealing a shift in consumer behavior, card spending, which rebounded by 4% in October, this is after a September slump, transaction volumes grew by 2%. The bank says the surge is not just about discounts, but it is about the psychology of year-end spending. For more on this, we joined on the line by Alicia Reynard, executive at Absa Rewards. Good to have you with us, Alicia, and quite a spanner in the works there that you throw, that it's not just about the discounts, but it's actually something more intangible, something more internal than external. Talk to us about that.
Sure, Tammy. Thanks for having me. I think what we are seeing is, from a trend perspective, we are really seeing customers, moving towards spending on things that really matter to them. We've seen a significant, shift towards groceries and essentials. So our members are definitely looking out for the great deals, and also not only the great deals offered by, our retailers such as our rewards partners, but also, what is the value that they can get from the organization through loyalty programs. What we also seen is specifically within the online space, we've seen significant growth kind of come through, and we're anticipating during this Black Friday, double-digit growth in online spending, specifically between our 46 to 60-year-olds. So definitely, we kind of seeing the trends hopefully going in the right direction. And this Black Friday, we also anticipating with the ease of interest rates, we'll probably see more growth from a credit card spend perspective than what we had seen last year.
We know that physical retail still remains, a firm favorite, despite the fact that e-commerce has been growing. But online shopping is expected to outpace the in-store retail sales this Black November. It's no longer just Black Friday, but the entire month of November, or at least the end of November seems to be a specials month. And this is largely driven by convenience, there's competitive pricing, and digital habits that have really become the norm for so many people. Why is it that we're seeing this trend?
Well, as you rightfully mentioned, Tammy, it really is around convenience. I think consumers have adopted this mobile-first behavior towards shopping. And that was really, sort of triggered through COVID, where a lot of spending kind of migrated to online. And we've kind of seen that trend increase significantly. If we just kind of look at our general customer spend behavior, customers are gravitating towards online. And I think what we've also seen is that there are not only more spend from a value perspective, but we also seen frequency increase within the online space. So I think it is far largely driven by the conveniency factor, and obviously, without a shadow of a doubt, the discounts and offers that our retailers offer, alongside the benefits that consumers get from a loyalty and rewards perspective, both from a retail perspective as well as from a banking perspective.
And from that banking perspective, you as Absa are really trying to cash in on this trend and change of consumer behavior, where they choose to shop and how they choose to shop. But you're also encouraging customers to add their Absa Visa card to a digital wallet. Tell us how that works and why. What are the advantages of that?
Sure. So what we are looking to do from an Absa Rewards perspective is really trying to provide more value for customers over this Black Friday week. So it really is about adding more value over and above the value that they get from retailers, giving them that extra cash back. And what we mean by digital wallets is when you go in store. So as you rightfully said, there is still, there are still customers that do gravitate towards physical in-store spend. And what we are looking to do is actually have customers use their Apple Pay, Google Pay, that's actually rendered on their Absa mobile device. It's a safer way of transacting, as well as a convenient way of transacting. So definitely from a Pay perspective, but also online. From an Absa Rewards perspective, we appreciate the convenience that consumers are after from an online perspective, which is the reason why our Black Friday offer really also, rewards customers not only using our digital wallets, which is Google Pay, Apple Pay, and so forth, but also using the cards online or on your mobile first shopping applications.
So talk us through some of the rewards and the perks that you have for this Black November under the Absa Rewards program.
Sure. So what we've done this year, very similar to what we've done last year, is we offer customers up to 100% cash back on the first 1,500 Rand that they spend at specific retail partner categories. And the reason why that is significant, and the reason why we're doing it again this year, is just taking the learnings from last year. The amount of value that our customers got from this campaign last year really added meaning to the end of year with this cashback booster. So I just did my spending, my grocery shopping earlier on, and just kind of doing the calculations. If I spend across the categories, I will get at least 7,500 by the end of the year. So that's a meaningful amount of money that really just once again allows our customers' cash to stretch a little bit further through the value of additional cashback. So yes, up to 100% cashback really does add value, and that's exactly what we are looking to achieve over this Black Friday week.
It certainly sounds like a saving fest. Alicia Reynard, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Very much appreciated, and happy shopping.
Thank you. And happy shopping to you too.
Thank you. That's Alicia Reynard, executive at Absa Rewards, as we focus on Black Friday and Black November and the type of specials and deals that consumers can have, and what a bumper season it is as well for retailers. It is towards the end of the year. People are looking for savings. They're looking to stock up for the festive season, but also maybe even for next year, and making sure that those pantries are filled. And as we heard earlier on, focus really being not so much even on luxuries, but on things that matter to families and individuals, people shopping for the likes of groceries and taking advantage of the lower prices during this season. Well, that's how we come to the end of Wednesday's edition of Africa in Business. From myself, Tami Ngubeni, we look forward to spending time with you once again tomorrow, which is Thursday, the 27th of November, as we continue keeping you abreast of all the developing stories as far as business is concerned on the African continent. Restez connectés as Vue d'Afrique comes up in just a moment.
Business, trade, and investment opportunities that put the continent first. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni.